I almost made it. All right. Hi, everyone. So what we're doing, I talked about this last Sunday during the sermon, but what we're going to do is just kind of an interview listening session, really, with Bryant Bozeman here and his wife, Patricia. Most of you probably remember Bryant. He grew up here at Chattahoochee Valley, and I think, like, in his heart, he's still involved with this congregation. He hangs out with the Tuckers. His cousin Brandon is here all the time, and we see them a lot. Tiffany Stevens, his cousin, used to come here when they lived in America. But you guys have met Bryant. But the purpose of this conversation is just to take some time and, in a very informal way, just chat about what's going on in the world and how we, as people here at Chattahoochee Valley, can become better listeners and maybe become allies and move away from unintentionally causing pain and hurt for people that we know and love. The goal is for us to love our neighbors as Jesus called us to do, and I think step one is reaching out. So, where you were just a moment ago.
Yeah. So I think the first thing that I want to say is that Bryant and I specifically, we do not subscribe to this idea of like white guilt or making white people feel guilty for things that they weren't responsible for. My heart on this has always been that this is an us against the problem. And also to say, for us to recognize that the past does have a legacy. And it is important that we recognize that there are certain things orchestrated in the past that is creating the environment, especially for people of color, that we have now. So our job, number one, the very first thing that I would say is it is important for the church to lament. Like, it is highly important for us to mourn with those who mourn, to weep with those who weep, because it is there that you take care of the heart issue. You take care of the pain. I'm getting emotional just talking about this. But you take care of the heart issue in order for us to discuss facts and logic and all of the things that need to be said in order for us to get to the healing place. But if we don't mourn with those who mourn first, if we don't make that declaration that your life is important, that your life matters, then you're not going to get anywhere. Like, no matter how much truth you spell out, no matter how many charts you bring up, like, no one is going to listen if you don't meet them where they are. And so I feel like, first and foremost, that is the starting place with addressing these type of issues or any issue of great importance.
I think that's so Christ-like. I just think about Jesus and the disciples, and Jesus, the first one to to feel that somebody hurting was near him and reach out to help them. Just Jesus wept, I think, is the easiest, most commonly memorized verse in the Bible. And I saw you posted about that on Facebook earlier today, and I was hoping you would talk about it. I think a lot of people have a hard time, and you guys can talk about this if you want to, when people get upset and they want to go protest. And I think one thing that I feel strongly about, I think people get caught up in not realizing how hurt people actually are, and how they really just want us people to feel that pain with them. Yes. Before anything else, and that pain leads places. So I'm glad you mentioned that. I don't really have any questions. I didn't want this to be an interview. I just wanted to chat. So Bryant, you grew up here, man. What was it like coming to Chattahoochee Valley when you were, 15? 14?
Oh, yeah. But, so initially, I was excited about coming to church from our neighbor, Aaron Norman, which a lot of you guys know. There was something about him that stood out. And I just wanted to check in and see what was going on with him, the way he loved, the way he cared about people. And that was one of the things that drew me, like, yeah, if that's where you're going, like, I want to go and experience it, Yeah. And so when I showed up on my first day, and I walked in, I was kind of shocked and I'm a little bit nervous because everybody in the everybody that was here was like all white, you know.
Yeah.
And I've never in my life I've been in a situation where I've been in a room where it's all white people, you know, there. So I was a little nervous at first.
Yeah.
Just walking in there, but as I started to like calm and I just started to see just how people just loved each other and stuff like that, and how as I began to get to know some of the people there, I started to see like, hey, they were loving me just like their sons, you know what I'm saying? They really treated me with so much kindness, you know, and that led to me wanting to know Jesus. Like, what was it? It was Jesus and them wanting to like cultivate that relationship, to, you know, to love people who are different than them, you know. So that was one of the biggest things that draw me here, you know. And one of the big things, and I know maybe you had talked about it, was just in that time of just getting to know people and just growing in Christ. Even though it kind of changed my perspective a little, you know, a lot. So when in times where I experienced like injustice or racism, you know what I'm saying? I realized that, you know, all people are not like that, you know, because of what I experienced here, like here's people in this building who are different color, different shade of me, but they loved me, like, and treated me just like I was their son, you know. Yeah. So I was able to separate. It's like, hey, like this, this happened to me, but I'm not in my mind going to say like, oh man, that all white people are bad, or, you know, I have that mindset, because like you guys became my brothers, you know, like youth group became my brothers, you know. So it was just like, I'm grateful that the Lord allowed me to experience that, you know. Especially in this climate like that's going on right now, like there's a lot of people who didn't grow up and experience that, you know. Where God allowed me to see that, that there are good people there. There's good people out there, and just because they're a different color than you, that doesn't mean that they can't love you like their son. You know what I'm saying? I know that's kind of all over the place, but it's just kind of what I experienced, and I know I'm dealing with pretty much all the things that are going on now. Like a lot of the guys out there, I believe they haven't experienced that, you know, or, you know, they're still holding on to that same narrative with all the things that they experienced in their lives. You know what I'm saying? Like with some of the things that I experienced, like just for example, I was just in this neighborhood, just a really nice neighborhood, and and these people pulled up again, like up to me, like, and they just happened to be white, and they was like, hey, like, you know, pretty much like, why are you here? You know, and I had to sit there and explain everything why I was there and stuff like that. And that was just one example.
Which, by the way, he didn't have to do.
I didn't have to do, but I was there. You know what I'm saying? I shouldn't have to, but I was just out there really just going to visit a friend. Like they just had a baby or whatever, but I had to explain everything. You know what I'm saying? And they were just really just inquiring, just, you know. And that's just one example. But when I recount some of the other things that happened in my life, it never turned my heart hard because of what I experienced here, like tangible love, that I experienced what, you know, the Lord is saying, like, how we should be, like we should love. Like the two greatest commandments is to love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and all your mind, and to love your neighbor as yourself. And I experienced it here, you know what I'm saying? And one of the biggest things that really drew me here to this church was just the avenue of the love. I just wanted to be a part of the family, and that's what led me to Jesus, you know? So this is a little bit of my background here.
What's your story, Patricia?
Well, I was just going to kind of touch on what Bryant said, too. I just think that basically what Bryant is saying is that distance breeds distortion and proximity brings clarity, you know? And I just think that the reasons why we need to have these conversations, that you actually need to see like Black people, is number one, to understand that just like white people, Black people are not a monolith.
Yeah.
And we have a wider range of personalities. We have different socioeconomic backgrounds. Honestly, if I were to share my story, like my story is more of an immigrant story. Literally, both of my parents were not born in America.
Yeah.
So I'm a first generation American. So my dad is Haitian and my mom is from Guyana. And so I don't know, I guess because I've always been immersed in different cultures, like my dad spoke 2 different languages,
Mm-hmm.
and on top of my dad being Haitian, his mother was half Asian. So I'm a mutt, you guys. I'm as like a mutt as you can be. I mean, literally.
Yeah.
Bryant was just so astonished, like when he went to my dad's funeral a few years back and saw my uncle, my dad's uncle. Like he looked like a darker version of Mr. Miyagi, and so he was really just shocked. Like he was just, I was like, I'm not joking. And they speak Creole, so I've always like been immersed in culture. And so that has always kind of softened my heart towards differences, just because my family was just already so different. And then also just number 2, I grew up mainly in the Northeast.
Mm-hmm.
We didn't move down here until I was 13, almost 14 years old. So in 2002 is when we moved to Georgia. And that was the first time, honestly, that I ever went to school with white people. Ever. I only went to school because we were so poor.
Mm-hmm.
So we lived in a section where it was mainly Hispanic and Black people. So, I mean, I honestly did not start going to school, having relationships, close relationships with white people until I moved to Georgia. And that will astonish people who think that the South is, blah, 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 blah. Anyways, but because my family always taught me, like, never really to, like, of course I do see color, but that was never the defining principle for me as far as, like, being friends with someone.
Sure.
So making friends of different cultures was always easy. It was like, I mean, literally, I have friends. My friend Jessica has been my friend from the time I moved here when we were 14 years old till now. Like, we are still, like, we call each other soul sisters because we've been neck and neck, like, since the day I moved here. And so I think, again, the reason why Bryant and I don't have this perception that all white people are the enemy is because we have been in a relationship with white people. However, I have noticed that even though Bryant and I, and this is where the hard conversations come in, even though Bryant and I, as people of color, 9 times out of 10, especially in minority cultures, we have to have relationships with majority culture or white people in order to thrive and succeed. However, that is not true for majority culture. You don't have to have relationships with Black people to work at a certain job or to succeed in a certain way, because 9 times out of 10, you can stay within your community and thrive. So there is something where we call code switching. I don't know if you ever heard that term, where you learn how to exist and act in a certain way in order to meet a certain criteria, to get a certain position, and I know that because of the way I speak. I also know because my name is Patricia and not Shaniqua, that there isn't this barrier for me in a way. Like, people literally have to meet me before they can make, you know what I mean? Like, they can't just see my resume, or they can't just talk to me on the phone and know what my race is. And so, like, for that, however, for my friends that aren't like that culturally, the barriers and the hurdles they have to jump in order to succeed. So I feel like that is a very important discussion.
No, I appreciate all of that. And there's so much that we can continue to talk about. So my goal was to make a video that's like 20 minutes long. And we're at 15 minutes now. But that's fine because you said great stuff. And man, what I want, and this is me personally, not me, minister, I just want to talk to you guys more because the truth is, what I struggle with as a white person, projecting what I think another person's like onto them. And then I respond to that projection rather than getting to know the person, as who they really are and letting them speak for themselves. So I am working on that. Like, I want to become the kind of person who lets you tell me who you are instead of me deciding who you are. And, like, that applies to race. That applies to all human relationships. But the big question that I really want to ask for you guys is, how can somebody like me, I seriously doubt there's much diversity in my genetic heritage. There hasn't been in my family. And I grew up with privilege. I grew up, I went to private school. I grew up wealthy. How can I be an ally to someone who has not had those experiences and that I may not understand just from my own experiences? How can I serve God's creation better? What would you guys recommend? And you mentioned this earlier. Black people are not a monolith. Yeah. I'm not trying to be, to condescend to believe or ask you guys to speak for everyone.
Oh, yeah.
What do you, Bozeman family, what do you guys think people could do in Columbus, Georgia, in this community to be better allies for people who are hurting?
Yeah, I think number one, what we are doing right now.
Oh, yeah.
I think the fact that we are invited to share our experiences. And number two, we just need the voice of white people to say, like, this was wrong. And there is pain here. And you know what? This pain is kind of old, you know? And I think that is what we need. I think this acknowledgement is really what is necessary. To be believed is really what's necessary. So I just think that, number one, to be believed. Number two, invite us to the dinner table.
Oh, yeah.
And then number three, to use your voice to speak into things that are wrong and be prepared for the backlash that comes with it, because there's a lot.
And we can't say, oh, I'm not like that, that wasn't me. I think we have to acknowledge that accidentally things come up, and it doesn't negate our experience as white people.
Right.
When we say, we're sorry, this happened to you because your race or your skin color. And I also think that prayer is activism. And if we're going to be activist, which I think we should be in this case, prayer has to be like the number one way
100%.
that we're trying to make a difference.
I totally agree.
Well, with that in mind, Bryant, do you think you could close us out with a prayer here?
Oh, yeah, I can. Lord, I just thank you for today, God, of just coming in here and just really dealing with these issues, God, speaking into these issues, God. Like you tell us in your word that we should stand up for one another, that we should love our brothers, Father, that we should lay our lives down for our brothers, God. And this is just a beginning, like, even though that this is some hard, deep topics, and there's a lot of things going on out there, God, a lot of darkness going on out there, Lord, but we know that you are working in this, God. You're working in it, and you're going to bring it to the good, God, that you're going to turn it to the good, God, as we continue to just dive in these conversations. That's where unity is formed, God, when we just come to a table and we just sit and have these hard conversations and just come to an understanding, God. Lord, I just thank you for what you're doing in this situation, God, that you're bringing all this to a light, God. Oh, you're bringing all this to the light, God. And I just pray for more conversations, God. I pray that we would be more intentional about speaking into injustice, that we would be more intentional about just loving our brothers, God. You made it so simple. You boiled it all down. To love, Lord. Lord, just allow us to be you to the lost, God. Lord, and that's when the change is going to be. That's when the change is going to. That's where the change is going to begin, God. I just ask that you would just continue to just have your way, God, in this situation, God. I pray that we would just stay focused on you, God, that everything that we are doing, God, that it should be filtrated through you, God, and through your word. You made it clear in your word how we should respond, God. Just help us to love, God. Help us to love our brothers, God. Amen.
Thanks, man. Thank you. All right, well, I'm going to end this video, but we're probably going to keep talking.
Oh,
Yeah, man.